The jury declared him guilty. She proclaimed his innocence. And what unfolded after that moment? Not a single soul in that packed courtroom could have predicted it. Mr. Green, your client requires you to make a statement. Complete silence. Judge Reiner remained motionless, his right eyebrow flickering slightly. That tiny movement revealed his growing irritation. The courtroom overflowed with spectators. Journalists, curious onlookers, and sensation seekers packed every row, all hoping to witness a young tech mogul either crumble under pressure or somehow escape his predicament. But defense lawyer Monroe Green simply shook his head, quietly snapped his briefcase shut, and declared in an icy tone, "I'm stepping down from this case, Your Honor." Immediately effective. A collective gasp swept across the room. Several people rose to whisper urgently. Others frantically grabbed their phones to post updates. But one individual, one very tiny individual, remained perfectly motionless. 8-year-old Amara Johnson, with colorful beads adorning her braids and wearing a borrowed dress that hung loose on her small frame, occupied a seat in the third row behind the defense table. Nobody had paid attention when she entered. Nobody wondered who she might be. Not yet. Ethan Brixley sat paralyzed at the defendant's table, staring at the empty chair beside him, his mouth completely dry. At just 26, this tech entrepreneur from Santa Clarita had created an application connecting people to secure employment during the pandemic. 12 months earlier, Forbes magazine had dubbed him the people's billionaire. Now shackles bound his wrists, accused of an act so heinous that complete strangers crave his downfall. But his innocence was absolute. He understood this truth. Heaven understood this truth. The judge struck his gavel once. "This behavior is extremely unconventional, Mr. Green. I comprehend Your Honor, but I offer no additional remarks. I cannot support a defendant who refuses honesty with his counsel." Another devastating blow to Ethan's spirit. His truthfulness was irrelevant. Everyone assumed deception. Then a voice emerged, tiny yet crystal clear, from the courtroom center. "I'll represent him." The entire room froze solid. The judge leaned forward, bewildered. "Pardon me?" Amara rose to her feet. Her voice trembled, but she refused to sit down. "I said I'll represent him." Scattered laughter erupted. One gentleman chuckled before stifling himself. Someone near the front pulled out their device and began recording. The bailiff stepped closer. "I'm certain this must be some kind of joke." "Young lady, state your name," the judge requested. "Amara Johnson." "And your age, Miss Johnson?" 8. The judge blinked hard. "I realize I'm not a licensed attorney," she added hastily, "but I've studied this case extensively, and I'm certain he's innocent. Absolutely certain." Everyone anticipated her immediate removal, but Judge Reiner hesitated. Not quite yet. He observed her with a mixture of fascination and sympathy. "And how could you possibly know that, Miss Johnson?" "Because he rescued my brother's life 2 years back." Now Ethan slowly turned in his seat. His gaze met hers directly. He recognized her face, but he couldn't recall saving anyone's life. And that's precisely when the courtroom began paying genuine attention. Reporters straightened in their seats. Phones were lowered. Amara stood her ground. Her small fingers gripped the wooden bench before her, knuckles turning white. "I've watched all the footage. I've read every article. People claim he was at that warehouse location, but that's impossible. He couldn't have been there." The prosecutor scoffed dismissively. "Your Honor, this is merely a child." Allow her to continue speaking. The judge interjected. More gasps. Nobody saw that decision coming. Amara stepped from her row and approached the front, moving like she performed this routine countless times. Her voice cracked slightly, but she never paused. "I understand you see me as just some little kid, but my brother admired him greatly. He participated in the mentorship program Ethan established. We had absolutely nothing. We didn't even have internet access. But Ethan provided every child in our apartment building with tablets and connectivity. My brother was college-bound because of his generosity, but death took him last year. Silence struck like a physical blow. I want to advocate for Ethan," she declared, "because nobody else is willing. And if that's not permitted, then perhaps this courtroom doesn't value truth." The judge settled back. Ethan sat frozen, eyes locked on this remarkable girl. The bailiff stood uncertain, and cameras continued rolling. In merely 3 minutes, the trial everyone thought they understood had transformed completely. But what nobody realized yet was that this little girl and this young millionaire shared a connection even they hadn't discovered. They didn't eject her from the courtroom. That shocked everyone. Judge Reiner permitted Amara to occupy a front bench while the bailiff whispered urgently to the court clerk. Meanwhile, the entire internet watched a shaky live stream from someone's mobile device. A child just volunteered to defend a millionaire. That was social media gold, spreading everywhere. Ethan sat in complete silence, wrists shackled, eyes fixed on the little girl who had just accomplished something even his professional lawyer wouldn't attempt. He desperately wanted to thank her, but what words could he possibly offer? She barely knew him. Did she? Court will break for 20 minutes. Judge Reiner announced finally. His voice carried authority, but curiosity lurked beneath. And someone please locate this child's guardian or parent before I violate numerous regulations. The gavel fell, and people buzzed with questions as they filed out. But Amara remained seated. She simply stared at Ethan like she was attempting to read his very soul. 2 hours earlier, Amara's morning had begun like every other. The one-bedroom apartment carried the scent of yesterday's fried chicken, and the television played a game show rerun her grandmother enjoyed. Grandma Joy slept on the couch, oxygen tube positioned in her nose. Gentle snores filled the space. Amara moved quietly around her. School started in an hour, but she'd already decided against attending. Not today. Today held importance. She slipped on her worn denim jacket, grabbed the threadbare backpack she kept for appearances, because inside weren't school supplies or pencils. It contained a spiral notebook crammed with every article she'd printed about Ethan Brixley. She'd spent weeks reading about him at the public library, not from obligation, but from genuine interest. Everyone else saw a wealthy man who'd made mistakes. She saw the person who had transformed her brother Malik's existence, at least temporarily. Malik was 17 when he joined that coding mentorship program. It gave him hope, a laptop computer, and an opportunity for something greater than their neighborhood in East St. Louis. But then Malik was gone. A shooting outside a convenience store stole him away before he could complete the program. Amara didn't hold Ethan responsible for that tragedy. How could she? If anything, she felt he was the only person who'd ever shown concern for children like Malik, and now everyone wanted him in prison for something she knew he hadn't committed. How do you know Amara? People asked when she mentioned at school. She never responded, but deep inside, she believed it. She believed in him more than anyone else believed in her. So she skipped school, walked to the courthouse, and sat in that gallery for hours just to see for herself. And when that attorney abandoned him, something shattered inside her. If nobody else would fight for him, then she would. Back in the courthouse hallway, complete chaos erupted. Reporters swarmed anyone who appeared to know the child. Amara kept her head down as a court officer guided her into a small waiting room. "Sweetheart, who's your parent or guardian?" The woman asked gently. "My grandma. She's at home." "You have a phone number for her?" Amara nodded, scribbled on paper, but when the officer called, nobody answered. Grandma Joy slept deeply when exhausted. Amara sat there, legs swinging, until the door creaked open. And there he stood, Ethan, still handcuffed, escorted by 2 deputies, but looking directly at her. "You," he said softly, like he couldn't believe she was real. "Why would you do that?" Amara looked up at him and shrugged. "Because you didn't do it." Ethan blinked. "You don't even know me." "Yes, I do," she said simply. "You helped my brother." The deputies exchanged glances. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. "Amara." "I'm sorry about your brother." Ethan whispered. "I didn't know." She nodded like she expected that response. "You gave him something nobody else would. That matters." Before he could respond, the deputies pulled him toward a side door. He looked like he wanted to say more, but couldn't. Amara sat there clutching her notebook, heart racing. If the judge allowed her to speak, she was prepared. She'd memorized everything. Every date, every detail. She was going to make them listen. But what she didn't realize was that standing up for Ethan would place her directly in the center of a storm bigger than she could imagine. Before the handcuffs, before the courtroom, Ethan Brixley had possessed everything. He wasn't born into wealth. Far from it. He grew up in Bakersfield, California, the son of a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep utilities running. When he was 15, he repaired a broken laptop someone was discarding. That old laptop became his beginning. By 19, he'd launched his first application from a Fresno dorm room. By 24, he was a millionaire. By 26, the word billionaire appeared in headlines like an honor he never sought. They called him a genius. The media adored him. Investors wanted involvement. His company, Linkbridge, wasn't merely an app. It was a lifeline. It connected disadvantaged youth to internships, scholarships, and mentorships nationwide. During the pandemic, when employment vanished and schools closed, Linkbridge kept kids learning, kept families fed. But positive headlines never endure. 3 months ago, everything collapsed. A fire erupted in an abandoned warehouse in St. Louis. Inside, police discovered a man, severely beaten, barely breathing. That man was Victor Hale, a corporate rival Ethan had publicly confronted over intellectual property disputes. On that same night, an eyewitness swore they spotted Ethan near that warehouse. The story spread like wildfire. Young billionaire attacks rival in shady dispute. Ethan denied everything. I wasn't even in St. Louis that night, he told everyone, but his phone pinged near the city limits. His rental car appeared on traffic cameras. And then the worst discovery. When they searched his office, they found cash hidden in a safe, thousands, something that didn't seem right for a man who operated everything digitally. The press destroyed him. Sponsors fled. Investors severed ties. People who once shook his hand now acted like strangers. And then came the indictment. Attempted murder, conspiracy, aggravated assault. Ethan knew the truth. He never touched Victor Hale. He didn't even know how the man ended up in that warehouse. But the evidence painted him guilty in brilliant colors. And the more he protested, the more everyone believed he was lying. The only person remaining in his corner was his attorney, Monroe Green, until this morning. The 20-minute recess stretched into an hour. Ethan sat in a holding room, staring at the white cinder block wall. He rarely prayed, but today he prayed for someone, anyone, to believe him. The door opened. A deputy walked in. "You've got 5 minutes." Ethan looked up and saw her again. Amara, small frame, large eyes, notebook clutched to her chest like armor. "How did you even get in here?" he asked. The deputy shrugged. "Judge said let her talk." Ethan almost laughed. "This is insane." Amara stepped closer. "Why'd your lawyer quit?" Ethan sighed. "Because I wouldn't lie. He wanted me to say I was there, but didn't commit the crime. I told him I wasn't there at all." "Were you?" "No." His voice was sharp, defensive, then softer. "I wasn't." Amara studied him like she was checking his homework. "Then why'd they say your phone was in St. Louis?" "I don't know." He rubbed his wrists against the cuffs. "I think someone framed me." "Who?" "I wish I knew." Amara flipped open her notebook. It was filled with handwritten notes, printed articles, and scribbles in blue ink. "I've been reading everything about you. You distributed laptops. You funded summer camps. You sent kids to college. Yeah, so you don't sound like somebody who beat a man almost to death." Ethan smirked bitterly. "Tell that to the world." "I will," she said firmly. He blinked. "You really think anyone's going to listen to you?" "They better," she shot back, "because I'm not lying." For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt something he thought he'd lost completely. Hope. It was ridiculous. A billionaire finding hope in an 8-year-old with braids and a stubborn streak. But there it was. Before the deputy could escort him out, Ethan leaned forward. "Amara, why are you doing this?" "Really?" She looked him dead in the eye. "Because nobody believed my brother either." Ethan froze. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. "When Malik died, they said he was just another gang kid. But he wasn't. He wanted to build apps. He wanted to work for you one day. And nobody cared. Not the cops. Not the news. Nobody told his story right. So I'm telling yours." The deputy tapped his watch. "Time's up." As they led Ethan away, his throat tightened. He didn't know if Amara could actually help him. But for the first time in months, someone saw him as more than a headline. But what neither of them knew yet was that the truth about the warehouse was far uglier than either of them imagined. The courtroom buzzed louder when the judge returned. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Cameras were still rolling. Social media was consuming this story. Hashtags trended. Hashtag kid lawyer. Hashtag free Ethan. Hashtag who is Amara? Amara sat up straight when the judge called the session back to order. Her feet barely touched the floor, but her eyes didn't waver. She was ready. Miss Johnson, Judge Reiner began, I appreciate your passion, but you are not licensed to represent anyone in this court. I know, sir, Amara said quickly. I'm not trying to be a lawyer. I just need you to hear me out. Please. The judge stared at her for a long moment. 1 minute, he said finally. Make it count. Reporters leaned forward like the Super Bowl was about to start. Amara clutched her notebook and stepped up to the center of the courtroom. Her voice shook at first, but then it steadied. Everybody thinks he did it because of some video and a phone ping. But I read all the news. It doesn't make sense. They said Mr. Brixley was in St. Louis the night Victor Hale got hurt. But his flight records show he left L.A. at 7 p.m. and didn't land in Missouri until after midnight. And that warehouse is on the other side of the city. That's hours away. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Even Ethan turned to look at her, surprised. I know people say kids don't understand grown-up stuff, Amara continued. But math is math. He couldn't have been in both places. Somebody lied. And whoever lied is trying real hard to make y'all hate him. The prosecutor shot up. Objection! Sit down, the judge snapped. You'll get your turn. Amara flipped a page. And another thing. Why would he do it? What's he got to gain from beating some guy in a warehouse? Nothing. But Mr. Hale, he had a reason to hurt himself or to make it look like somebody else did. I saw that article where Hale's company was about to lose a huge deal to Linkbridge. If Brixley went to jail, guess who gets the deal back? Now the whole room buzzed. The prosecutor tried to speak again, but the judge slammed his gavel. Enough, Judge Reiner said. Miss Johnson, your time is up. Amara bit her lip and nodded. Thank you for listening. As she walked back to her seat, the judge glanced at Ethan. For the first time all day, his face softened just a little. The recess turned into a scheduling break. Court would reconvene tomorrow. Reporters sprinted out like they were running the Kentucky Derby, hungry for interviews. But Ethan didn't care about them. He only cared about the little girl now sitting quietly, hugging her notebook like it held the world. Outside the courthouse, the sky turned a pale orange. The steps overflowed with news crews, flashing cameras, and people shouting questions. In the middle of it, Amara stood alone, scanning the crowd. She knew her grandma was probably worried sick, but she didn't have a phone. Then a voice called her name. Amara. She turned and saw a woman running toward her. Tall, tired eyes, hair pulled into a scarf. Grandma Joyce out of breath, but moving fast for someone with bad knees. Girl, what on earth? Joyce grabbed her by the shoulders, looking her over. You got the whole city talking about you. I had to, Grandma, Amara said softly. Nobody else was going to help him. Joyce sighed, rubbing her forehead. Baby, you can't just stand up in court like you're Perry Mason. He didn't do it, Amara insisted. Joyce opened her mouth to argue, then shut it. Deep down, she knew that stubborn look. Amara got it from her mama. A man in a gray suit approached, holding a mic. Amara. Joyce. Channel 5 News. Can we get a comment? Joyce stepped in front of her. Not today. She grabbed Amara's hand and pulled her down the steps. They didn't notice the black SUV parked across the street. Inside, a man watched them through tinted glass, his face hidden under a cap. His phone buzzed. He answered with one word, problem. That night, Amara sat on the edge of her bed, watching her grandma pace. The apartment felt even smaller with all the noise coming from the TV. Every channel replaying her courtroom speech, like it was a movie trailer. Joyce stopped pacing and sat beside her. Baby, why does this matter so much to you? Really, Amara stared at the peeling paint on the wall. Because he cared about us, about Malik. Nobody else did. Joyce softened. You think helping this man gonna bring Malik back? No, Amara whispered. But maybe it means he didn't die for nothing. Joyce sighed and hugged her. For the first time all day, Amara let the tears come. Across town, Ethan lay in a jail cell, staring at the ceiling. Amara's words replayed in his mind like a broken record. Somebody lied. He believed her. But who? His thoughts were cut short when a guard appeared at the bars. You got a visitor. Ethan frowned. At this hour? He sat up. The guard unlocked the door. And when Ethan walked into the visitor room, his blood ran cold. Sitting there, waiting for him, was a face he thought he'd never see again. But what this man was about to say would turn everything upside down. Ethan froze at the sight of the man in the visitor room. Trevor, he whispered. Trevor Maddox, the guy who'd been his best friend since college. The guy who'd been his first business partner before cash and ambition tore them apart. They hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. Trevor leaned back in his chair, calm, smug, even. You look like hell. Ethan sat down slowly, chains clinking. What are you doing here? Checking on an old friend. Trevor smiled without warmth, or what's left of him. Ethan clenched his jaw. You set me up. Trevor chuckled, relaxed. Detective, I didn't beat Hale. I'm not that sloppy. But you wanted me to take the fall. Wanted? Trevor tilted his head. Still do. Ethan's stomach dropped. Why, Trevor? I gave you everything. I pulled you into Link Bridge when nobody else believed in us. You pulled me in, Trevor said, his voice turning sharp. And then you pushed me out. You thought you were better than me. So I found someone who thought I was worth more. Ethan stared at him. Hale! Bingo! Trevor leaned forward. Eyes cold. He wanted you gone. I wanted payback. Win-win. Ethan felt his pulse in his ears. You framed me. You used my phone? Cloned your SIM? Easy. Rental car? That was a gift from me to you. Trevor grinned. You should have seen your face when the cops showed up. Priceless. You think you'll get away with this? Trevor shrugged. Who's going to believe you? The world loves a fall from grace. You're not a hero anymore, Ethan. You're a headline. And tomorrow you'll be a conviction. Ethan's hand shook under the table. Why are you telling me this? Because I wanted you to know it wasn't luck that took you down. It was me. Trevor stood up, buttoning his jacket. Enjoy your last night as a free man. The guard came in to escort Ethan out. He didn't fight. He couldn't. The betrayal sat like a brick in his chest. Across town, Amara sat in the living room while her grandma dozed in the recliner. The news replayed her clip for the 10th time. Her name scrolled across the screen with headlines like, 8-year-old defends billionaire. She should have been proud. Instead, she felt restless. Something was missing. Amara opened her notebook, scanning every detail she'd written about the case. Flight times, traffic cams, the warehouse. Then her eyes landed on a single name, Trevor Maddox. She remembered it from an old article about Linkbridge's early days. She grabbed her pencil and started circling things. Trevor had been there at the start. He'd vanished after some lawsuit. And then nothing. Until now. Grandma, Amara whispered, nudging Joyce awake. We got to go back tomorrow. Early. Joyce groaned. Lord, child, you trying to give me a heart attack? I think I know who set him up. Joyce stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Amara, I'm serious, Grandma. If I'm right, this ain't just about Ethan. It's about people who think they can do whatever they want and nobody going to stop them. The next morning, court was chaos. Reporters packed the steps like sardines. Protesters shouted on both sides, some holding free Ethan signs, others yelling lock him up. Inside, Ethan shuffled in with dark circles under his eyes. He barely noticed the cameras anymore. All he could think about was Trevor's smirk. Then he saw Amara in the front row. She gave him a tiny nod like, don't give up yet. The hearing started. The prosecutor stood, smug, and ready to close the coffin. Your Honor, he said, the evidence is clear. Phone records place a defendant near the scene. His financial motive, objection. Every head turned. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Amara again. Judge Reiner slammed the gavel. Miss Johnson, just let me show you one thing, she pleaded, waving her notebook. One thing, and if I'm wrong, I'll sit down and never talk again. The courtroom buzzed like a beehive. Cameras zoomed in. The judge pinched the bridge of his nose. 30 seconds. Amara sprinted to front, notebook in hand. She flipped to a page and slapped on the desk. This, she said, pointing to printout, is an email from Linkbridge public folder. It's old, but look, Trevor Maddox's name. He was the co-founder. Everybody forgot about him. But guess what? He's been meeting with Victor Hale's lawyers. Last week, the prosecutor scoffed. That proves nothing. Then why? Amara said loudly, did Trevor buy a plane ticket to St. Louis the same day Mr. Hale got hurt? Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Ethan stared at her, stunned. How did she even find that? Judge Reiner leaned forward. Is this true, counselor? The prosecutor stammered. I'm not aware. Then you better get aware. The judge barked. Court will recess for 2 hours while I review this. Gavel down. Chaos erupted. As deputies let Ethan out, he locked eyes with Amara. For the first time in days, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he had a shot. But nobody realized Trevor Maddox wasn't done yet. The next move he made could cost someone their life. 2 hours later, the courtroom felt like a pressure cooker. Reporters whispered. Cameras rolled. Social media exploded with theories. Who is Trevor Maddox? Did the kid just crack the case? When the judge returned, the air was so tight you could almost hear hearts pounding. After reviewing the evidence presented, Judge Reiner said, this court has serious concerns about the integrity of the state's case. He adjusted his glasses, eyes cutting toward the prosecutor, and even more concerns about the thoroughness of this investigation. The prosecutor's face turned red. Therefore, the judge continued, I am ordering the immediate release of Mr. Brixley on bond. Furthermore, the court is requesting a formal inquiry into the actions of one Trevor Maddox. The room exploded. People jumped to their feet. Reporters scrambled like a tidal wave of flashing lights. Ethan sat frozen for a second, then exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. The deputies removed his cuffs. For the first time in weeks, his wrists were free. He turned, and there she was, Amara, standing on the bench to see over the crowd, grinning so wide her cheeks hurt. He walked straight to her. The cameras loved it, but Ethan didn't care. He knelt down to her level, voice breaking as he said, You saved me. Amara shook her head. Nah, you saved Malik. I just finished the job. He smiled, tears stinging his eyes. Your brother will be proud. Her smile wavered. I hope so. Joyce walked over, shaking her head, but smiling too. You sure know how to stir a pot, little girl. Amara giggled. Guess it runs in the family. Outside, the chaos didn't stop. Reporters shouted questions. People shoved mics in their faces, but Ethan put his arm gently around Amara's shoulders as security guided them to a car. Can I ask you something? Ethan said quietly as they walked. Yeah. Why didn't you give up? Even when everybody said I was guilty. Amara thought about it for a second. Then she looked up at him and said the words that would end up on 1 million news clips that night. Because when the world calls you a liar, somebody's got to remember the truth. And sometimes that somebody is a kid. Ethan smiled. For the first time in a long time, he felt human again. Not a headline, not a scandal. Just a man who got a second chance. A week later, Trevor Maddox was in handcuffs. Evidence linked him to Hale, the warehouse, and the setup. The headlines flipped overnight. From billionaire to victim. The truth behind the frame-up. Linkbridge stock soared, but Ethan didn't care about that. What mattered was sitting at a small kitchen table in East St. Louis, sharing fried chicken with a little girl and her grandmother. You know, Ethan said between bites, you'd make one heck of a lawyer someday. Amara grinned. You think so? I know so. She smiled, eyes bright. Then you better keep out of trouble, Mr. Brixley, because next time I'm charging you. They all laughed, The kind of laugh that feels like a full breath after drowning. And here's the thing. This wasn't just about a billionaire and a kid. It was about loyalty, about speaking up when no one else will, about believing in someone even when the world says don't. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this. Don't underestimate the power of your voice. Even the smallest voice can echo loud enough to change a life. And if you're watching this right now, I've got one question for you. If you saw someone about to lose everything because no one believed them, would you stand up and say, I can defend them